Today's the day. Today is the day good men die.
The Spekir warrior clans had all but called for a retreat to the borders of Alron and Midgard, leaving naught but a few half-trained soldiers and farmers with spears to defend against the Red Lord's scourge. Once the enemy broke through the defenses, Northgate would fall. Tomor stood at the edge of town, the thick fog obscuring his view of the Midland Mountain pass that led into the hearth. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, trying to keep the exhaustion at bay. The scouting forces they sent north 3 days ago had not returned, forcing them all to pull double watch duties.
You could cut this tension with a long sword,
Tomor thought. Most of the men and women here had accepted that they would die, but they were still anxious to face the blade that would deliver the kill.
Why'd you think they pulled everyone else back to the borders?
Asked Philowin, a wiry girl not even in her 20s, who got the unfortunate honor of being pulled from her peaceful life of farming to wield a spear. He remembered when she was born. It was a small town, after all.
The mountains,
Tomor said.
They know them all too well. It would be near impossible defending Northgate from raids. They'd eventually wear us down through attrition alone. Forcing them to fight on the plains makes things lean in our favor.
Philowin nodded, still seeming confused.
You're wondering why they left us here then. I can see it in your face.
She nodded again.
I just don't see what good we're gonna do against them.
Rearguard. Delay them long enough so that the others can set up the proper defense, and don't get shot down by arrows while they pull back to the border.
Philowin grimaced, but didn't say anything further on the matter.
Best not to worry yourself, lass. At least...
Tomor started before a sharp, metallic clang interrupted him as a helmet came bouncing on the stone path out of the fog. It rolled to a stop just a few feet away, a severed head sliding out of the helmet's confines. Philowin jumped back, letting out a shocked cry.
That's Haravir!
He looked back to the other guardsmen.
Sound the alarm and call for the mage. We should anticipate strikes on the barricades in waves. In the times their warriors pull back is when we need Oranth to hit them hard with whatever spells he has in that book of his.
The town burst alive, all manner of people running to sound the alarm and get to their assigned formations. Tomor saw the robed Oranth, a wood-elven fellow, step out of one of the buildings and begin trekking towards his position at the northern gate. Tomor turned and put a hand on Philowin's shoulder as she began to shake.
Easy now. Panicking will get you killed. Just breathe and keep your eyes up.
She nodded and did as he instructed, turning her attention out into the fog. Minutes went by. Tense and quiet minutes before Tomor spotted the first two shadows appear in the fog.
Just two? Where were the strike teams? The battle lines? The armies that could only be responsible for such desolation he had heard of?
The air roared next to Tomor as a bolt of flame shot over his shoulder, coming from Oranth. In a quick motion, one of the shadows in the fog whipped up his blade and deflected the bolt. It wasn't an instant after the fire hit the ground that the second figure was upon the barricade, tearing through the wooden debris like a charging stag, shield up and mace alight. Philowin spun to meet the figure but was too late. The mace connected with her jaw as a sickening crack flooded Tomor's hearing. Her body was launched to the side where it connected with a cabin wall before slumping lifeless to the ground. Tomor went numb and began to fall back as soldier after soldier was cut down with a calculated precision he had never seen before. The two cut through his fellows like an onkeg through a wheat field. It was then that he understood. There wasn't an army coming, for they didn't need one. They were the army. As Tomor spun to regain himself, his foot caught on the now eviscerated corpse of Oranth, causing him to lose his composure.
If Oranth was down, then that meant...
His thoughts were cut short as a mace connected with his gut, filling his whole body with pain and sending him toppling over the body. Blackness took him not long after. When Tomor awoke, he was bound by the hands. His head reeling, he took the time to glance around him. He had been set out in a semicircle with at least 16 others, all bound in the center of town. Some among them were not even of the fighting spirit. A messenger boy, a young water girl, the older cook who gave them all meals. A voice rang out from across the semicircle. "You call this a resistance?" It boomed with an air of command that made Tomor flinch. This was hardly a warm-up. Tomor looked to the source of the voice and saw a third figure step out of the mist to join up with the other two that had slain so many of his friends. Cloaked in a red shawl and glistening armor that seemed to be bleeding at the seams, a large sword hefted over his shoulders. It was him, Spekir, the Red Lord. "Still, as is customary, I must offer the chance for redemption," the Red Lord continued. "One of you may have the privilege of facing me in a duel. Should you win, I shall leave you and yours alive and cease my conquest against Northgate." The Red Lord looked around. "Any takers?" Tomor followed that monster's gaze as he surveyed the survivors.
These are farmers, not fighters.
He was the best chance they had. At least his time serving on the Alren coast gave him some measure of experience.
I accept,
Tomor said, wincing as he stood up. That mace blow earlier had likely broken something. "As you wish," the Red Lord said as he motioned for Tomor's bonds to be cut and a weapon relinquished to him. Tomor took the weapon by the hilt. A longsword, something he was familiar with at least. Assuming a defensive stance, Tomor prepared for this monster of a man to come at him. In a flash, Spekir began to move with a speed that defied his armor and blade. Tomor barely had time to react, brandishing his sword to parry the greatsword as it came crashing down next to him. He heard the man chuckle as he whipped the blade from the earth towards Tomor. Narrowly getting his sword up in time, he deflected the strike again. Composing himself, Tomor went for a slash at the Red Lord's throat, but the man caught his blade. Tomor tried to pull free, but was quickly greeted by a fist in the gut as he felt another crack, sinking to his knees. Spekir had left his blade embedded in the dirt to strike him, but quickly grabbed the hilt and yanked it to the side towards Tomor's head. Tomor managed to get his blade up to block the strike, utilizing his other hand to support the top of the sword, a move that would hopefully stop it from shattering. It didn't. Tomor's blade broke with a quick snap as the Red Lord's greatsword connected with it, cleaving through the metal and removing Tomor's arm at the elbow. He let out a scream of pain as blood poured from his severed appendage, fighting to maintain consciousness. Surprisingly, Spekir took a step back. He turned and looked to the northern skies, bellowing out, "Is this all you have to offer me at all? Am I no longer to face a worthy challenge?" Seeing his chance, Tomor gritted his teeth and pushed through the pain.
God's everything hurt.
He lunged forward with his broken blade, and managed to slide the shattered point into a crevice in the Red Lord's armor just above the waist. The man cried out in pain before spinning around with the broken weapon still embedded in him and grabbed Tomor by the throat. "I was to give you a warrior's death," Spekir growled, "but now I will make you suffer." The Red Lord spun Tomor around, pulling out the broken blade and slamming it into Tomor's leg, forcing him to the ground even further. "Kill them," the man ordered. The other two monsters complied, systematically making their way to each bound villager and relieving them of their heads as Tomor was forced to watch. Once the last head hit the ground, the Red Lord released his grip on Tomor and turned to the other two, brandishing a torch. Likewise, they pulled torches from their bags as well. "Burn this town down in the name of the Hernir. Northgate is ours." That monster in red gave Tomor one last look before throwing his torch into the nearest hut and vanishing into the fog. The other two followed suit, leaving Tomor bleeding out to watch his home burn